I was talking to one of my doctor students who's studying software development, and it made me think back to when I was in that. I started really getting very serious about programming computers about 1975, I would say. By 79, I was pretty good at it, and my first job actually was as a programmer in Washington D.C. But let me talk about the environment for those who are not familiar with development software, and in particular highlight the complexities that you find yourself in. First of all, there's technical complexity, large code bases, monoliths, and microservices, legacy systems, and modern stacks. I was involved with a few projects that had old COBOL software and had Fortran software, and then eventually evolved into C++, Java, and some of the more modern languages. So uh, it's really quite a challenge when those systems are combined to try to find the sweet spot of dependency density and the proper integration points for the new software and the legacy is not so easy. Another element of complexity is organizational complexity. I found myself working with cross-functional teams. At first, I was working with quite a number of mathematicians, and by the time I moved to California, I was working with a lot of physicists and engineers. So not trivial working with the different talents that you have to interact with as a programmer, and not to mention if you have remote teams and distributed teams. For instance, when I worked on the system software at Southern California Edison, some of the programming staff was in Connecticut, so you can imagine the difficulty there. Multiple stakeholders. We were ultimately working for the software was running the nuclear power plant at San Onofre, which was one of the plants for Southern California Edison. So Southern California Edison had other utilities, other types of utilities besides that nuclear plant. So multiple stakeholders and product owners. So you know you kind of get a sense then of that kind of organizational complexity. And I mentioned I was in public utilities, so that means that there's some compliance heavy environments. Finance, healthcare, and government are three that come immediately to mind. I was in public utilities back then. When I was programming in Washington D.C., it was government, in particular DoD. So, and then finally, cognitive complexity. There's high mental load when you're a new developer, trying to understand someone else's code. I did not realize when I first started working with the programming staff that in many scenarios you're trying to interpret some other code because your code will interface with other modules that already exist in the application. So, how does one plan for success? What kind of metrics should you consider when you are a new programmer onboarding? Well, how long does it take you to create meaningful contributions to the existing software? There's a style component. I had to learn how to reverse engineer some of the code that was already in place and began to figure out how I can then match to those what variables were global, which variables were local, etc. Um, you want to try to minimize rework, but you can't get around rework. You may have thought that you covered all the options of what the users want, but it's not until you test you find out that you missed a few things. Of course, knowledge and knowledge acquisition. you're working with different systems, working with different domains, different databases, different tools. The .NET environment was kind of blown up when I got into C programming and C sharp and C++, etc. Uh, and so there's a bit of need for social integration with the teams, right? It's not all technical. There's a bit of bonding that you have to do. Okay, so how does this happen then? Should companies have structured ongoing onboarding programs? Should you have more than the documentation of the spec of the software you're working on? Should there be some discoverability component to your documentation? How about system mapping and architectural overviews? I didn't realize how much I needed that until some of my software became part of an enterprise collective. So um, mentorship would have helped. I was very alone in those early programming days. It would have been nice to have code reviews and learning conversations with some of the more seasoned programmers. Eventually, I did kind of join some programming user groups, and that really kind of helped a little bit because there's a lot of cognitive load and information overload when you're onboarding with a software team. So I just, came up with these thoughts and thought that it might be interesting to those of you out there that are considering working as a programmer. You may be studying now a language, you might be in college, but there's more to it than just the basic structure of the language. You have to think about when you start working. I'm sure they're not going to let you loose on some of the production software right away. And so you have to kind of work yourself into the team and become acclimated to becoming a productive member. So I hope this helps if you're thinking about a programming career. I'm sure some of what I just talked about will give you a lift. All right. I am Dr. Brandon Hamilton. Thank you so much for listening.